Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our participants in this panel discussion. I first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Robert Helfenbein, who is the Secretary of the Executive Council of the Global Forum 2027, who will say some welcome words to our participants. Robert, please.
Hello, colleagues. As was said, my name is Rob Helfenbein. I'm a professor of curriculum studies at Mercer University here in the United States and the secretary of the Executive Council of the Global Forum. I am speaking today on behalf of the chair of our Executive Council, Professor Bonnie Wozilek, who could not join us today. She's recovering from some successful surgery. So she's resting and recovering, and we certainly wish her the best. I'd like to begin by thanking the Activities Committee chaired by Professor Jorge Velarde Burgos for continuing to create these wonderful opportunities for us to gather and think about issues that are central to the Declaration and our global work as educators interested in issues of justice and care. It really has been an exciting set of meetings. And again, so wonderful to see so many people logging in today. I'm excited to welcome our panelists, Sylvia Smelkes from Mexico, Dina Buchbinder from Mexico, Rosa Wolpert from UNESCO, and Anna Kierkegaard from Norway, and our moderator, Hilda Patino from Mexico as well. So it's a great honor to have these voices in conversation today. And finally, we would like to remind our community of two things. The first is that we're very excited to announce the call for proposals for the Global Forum 2027, which will be held at the University of Nairobi. I will put the link to that in the chat. Please bookmark that. The submission portal is now open, and we are looking forward to seeing those of you that can join us next year in Kenya. Finally, we'd like to remind you that the next general membership meeting is scheduled for June 24th at 1:30 p.m. GMT, with much of the technical work underway, like getting the web page and the submission portal ready, not to mention things like bank accounts and websites and those types of and constitutions. We're hoping to continue building our community with you and increasing general membership engagement. So we'll be sending out reminders about the 2027 forum and the general meeting, so keep an eye out for that. But with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jorge and start our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Robert Helfenbein, for your welcome words. Now, Hilda, who will be Hilda Patino, Professor Hilda Patino, who will be the moderator, please go on with the panel discussion. Welcome, Hilda.
Hi, everyone. We are very glad to see you all and to have these wonderful panelists. I would like to introduce each one of them, and then each one of them will have about 15 minutes to expose their topics, and then we will open a space to questions and comments of the audience. So I welcome everybody. First of all, I would like to present you Silvia Schmelkes. I would like to share my oh, I just lose my, okay. Okay, let me share the screen, please. Okay. Here. Can you see the screen? My presentation?
Yes.
So we have Silvia Schmelkes, Rosa Wolper, Dina Buchbinder, and Anne Kierkegaard in this forum. Silvia is a Mexican sociologist, a researcher, professor, writer, and public servant. She's known for her work in intercultural education and for her book, Towards the Better Quality of Our Schools. Schmelke's work has been published in 5 languages by institutions such as the Mexican Ministry of Public Education, UNESCO, and the Organization of American States. She was president of the National Institute for Education Evaluation from 2013 to 2017. Schmelkes is a member of the governing board of the OECD Center for Educational Research and Innovation since 1997 to the present, and a member of the International Academy of Education. In 2008, she received the Comenius Medal from UNESCO for her career as a researcher. She has also received recognition as a member of the list of the best educators of America, uh, awarded by the Organization of American States in 1995, and for the second time in 1997. So welcome, Silvia Schmelkes. Dina Buchbinder is a visionary social entrepreneur. Buchbinder launched Educational for Sharing in Mexico in 2007, and since then, she and the organization have helped 1.8 million children, educators, and parents, plus 5 million more through online platforms across 13 countries, become global citizens and agents of social and environmental change. Buchbinder is an Ashoka Fellow, AHF Fellow, and was recognized as a 2018 Emergency Global Leader by the Harvard Kennedy School. She is also a Mission 4.7 champion and a TEDx speaker committed to advancing education for sustainable development. Dina is one of the 15 visionaries who received the 2024 Wayfinder Award presented by the National Geographic Society in partnership with Kia. So very welcome, Dina. Rosa Wolpert worked for 10 years in the Ministry of Education in Mexico in planning and policy making. Since 2012, she has worked in the United Nations, first in UNICEF, and since 2015 as a National Education Officer in UNESCO Mexico. In UNESCO, she is responsible for the education program involving partnerships with the federal and state education ministries, private sector, and NGOs, implementing programs and policies to promote achievement of global education goals. Her most recent projects involve basic learning skills in primary education, global citizenship education, education for sustainable development, and promoting the use of technology in education to address inequalities. Wolpert is Vice President and Executive Director of ProfMex Consortium of Research on Mexico and Vice President of the Kipos Network of Teacher Training. She has received many awards, including from the Mexican Association for International Education, AC. So welcome, Rosa Wolpert here. Then we have Anne, finally. Anne is an independent researcher and consultant from Norway. Her academic background in peace and development research, social anthropology, and postcolonial analysis has consistently been anchored in problem-oriented interdisciplinary inquiry, drawing on peace and development research, anthropology, governance studies, and critical security scholarship. Her work focuses on linking local experiences of insecurity with global political and economic structures and change, while examining ethics, memory, identity, and institutional practice. She was senior lecturer at Marmot University for 10 years, from 2004 to 2024, in the Department of Global Political Studies. Her main areas of teaching is peace and conflict studies, but she have also taught and supervised global politics, international migration studies, and human rights. Her research is focused on peace theories with a focus on decolonization of the subject of peace and conflict studies. So welcome here. So we'll start with Sylvia, and then we'll continue with Dina, and then with Rosa, and finally with Anne. Okay? So Silvia, the screen is all yours.
Okay, I'll share my screen just a second, please. Please let me know if you can see it.
Wait a second. Not yet.
No. No, nothing. You try again.
Please. I forgot to tell you that I am the moderator, and I have this horrible work of keeping track of time.
You can't see it?
Not yet, Silvia.
No,
It says that I'm screen
it
sharing,
says
but
that you're showing. Ah, there it is. It's
There it
there.
is.
Mhm.
it's there already.
Now you,
Yes.
yeah, but put it in full
Presentation mode.
view mode. Haha.
Wait, just a second. Can you see it in full mode or do you see the double screen?
The double screen.
Let me change
The
that.
full mode. Maybe it's an internet problem.
No, no, the thing is that this always happens with. There, you should be seeing it now. Complete, no?
No, we cannot see. Oh,
It
yeah,
is, yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Now it is complete.
Okay, sorry for that. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. And I'm going to speak about intercultural education and its relationship to equity in education, beginning with an introduction saying that equity and equality are not the same, as I think we all know. Equality means providing the same resources, the same curriculum to everyone, whereas equity signifies allotting more resources and giving more attention to those most in need, and providing relevant and pertinent education to diverse populations. I'm from Mexico, and that is Latin America. And Latin America, like many other regions in the world, is a culturally diverse region with nearly 50 million indigenous people and more than 600 different cultures and languages. So in Latin America, as in many other regions of the world, intercultural education is a must. Intercultural education is equitable education. It's education for equity. What are the requirements for an equitable education? Well, the first thing that we have to ensure is that school-age population attends school and remains in school for at least the time it takes to finish compulsory education. But for the indigenous population, this is in general not the case. Indigenous children attend school less than non-indigenous children. Many of them do not complete compulsory education. And this has a lot of causes, but in many cases, the language used in school is not their language. And in most cases, their culture is not present in the school curriculum. So school is alien to them. Although this is not the only cause of less attendance and termination, it is a very important one. And this is what intercultural education aims to solve. Also, racism and prejudice and discrimination are prevalent in Latin America. This is a consequence, of course, of 3 centuries of colonial rule and the continuation of neo-colonial structures, policies, and attitudes of the population. These are historical and structural causes that explain why most indigenous communities have less access to basic services, including education, and why nearly 80% of them live in poverty, especially the young population, children and youth. They also explain indigenous migration to urban areas where they suffer discrimination in all areas, including in schools. Racism and discrimination in multicultural schools also explain why many indigenous students become dropouts before finishing their compulsory education. Educational systems have largely ignored the rich contribution of indigenous cultures. Mainstream society is not made aware through the education systems of the wealth of cultural diversity of their own countries. Indigenous cultures are mostly ignored, and therefore racism, unfortunately, is reproduced. We all know that the purpose of education is learning. Of course, children have to go to school and have to remain in school in order to learn, but learning is the purpose of schooling. But unfortunately, learning is not a necessary consequence of attending school, as we all know. Inequity in the quality of education explains why Indigenous children achieve significantly lower and standardized tests than non-Indigenous children. There are things that all children around the world must learn. They must learn to read and write in their own language and in the national language. They must learn mathematics, and they have to have digital skills because digital skills are now an instrument to be able to continue to access knowledge. These are foundational for further learning. All children must know about their rights and must be aware of the country that they live in. And they should also have the opportunity to have, this is moving on its own, the opportunity of having a values education, education for peace, for sustainability, and for responsible citizenship. So let's turn to intercultural education. Intercultural education is the means through which education contributes to building an intercultural society. It is characterized by the relationship of this, an intercultural society is characterized by the relationships between members of different cultures that have three requirements. They are based on respect, they occur on equal footing, and they result in mutual enrichment. An intercultural society does not admit asymmetries, economic, social, political, or educational, due to cultural differences. It combats them. That is part of intercultural education. Intercultural education also combats, or particularly combats, educational asymmetries with indigenous population, with the mainstream population, and in multicultural environments. So intercultural education is therefore equitable education and a humanizing education. So let's turn to this first scenario, that's intercultural education with indigenous peoples. Here, what we are struggling with is to reach equity and access, permanence, and learning. But intercultural education with indigenous people also aims to achieve pride of belonging through knowledge of their language and culture and a strong relationship with the community and its elders. And intercultural education exercises epistemic justice. We're going to speak about that further on, very quickly, of course. Let's look at this. All right, so intercultural education for mainstream society. I can't seem to. Sorry, this thing is moving on its own. Okay, for intercultural education for mainstream society or for all is anti-racist education. And it involves four stages in a spiral. You come back to the first one after you've reached the fourth one. So these four stages are, the first one is knowing about our cultural and linguistic diversity, which is something that has not been taught in schools up to now. The second one is learning to respect the different others, which is also an educational objective, respecting the different others. The third is appreciating the different others, which is a consequence of having the possibility or the opportunity of being enriched by the other who is different. And the fourth is developing indignation for asymmetries and injustices towards these different others that you have learned to appreciate. So this is like the curriculum for intercultural education for all, and as you can see, it's anti-racist education. And also intercultural education in multicultural settings involves zero tolerance for any type of violence, discrimination, or prejudice, because the members of different cultures are coexisting and living together in the same school and in the same classroom. So zero tolerance for any type of violence, discrimination, or prejudice. Multiple opportunities to be enriched by those who are different, that you are living, you are actually living with them in the classroom. And it also exercises epistemic justice. So a word on epistemic justice. In the three contexts, we need epistemic justice, which is the inclusion of knowledge and of ways of knowing of indigenous people on equal standing with Western knowledge and the scientific way of knowing. These have been traditionally ignored and made invisible. So we need respectful and fruitful epistemic dialogue, which allows for understanding the world more fully and perhaps also helps solve problems that affect us all, such as biodiversity, equality, democracy, and the strength of the community, which are very strong ways of knowing and knowledge of indigenous population. Epistemic justice is important because epistemic injustice is one of the causes of educational inequality against indigenous peoples. Its absence in mainstream schools is one of the reasons why racism prevails. So epistemic justice is important to eradicate prejudices and discrimination through dialogue between different knowledge systems, epistemologies, and values, not in order to adopt these different knowledges or knowledge systems, but in order to have access to the wealth of human knowledge. And finally, the role of education. I truly believe, and I think all educationalists believe also that education can transform society from a multicultural one in which many cultures coexist, but where racism still prevails, to an intercultural country or society where diversity is valued, in which social, economic, and cultural asymmetries gradually disappear, where relationships between cultures are based on respect, and where indigenous people are proud of their identity and can relate to others on equal standing. Where mainstream society abandons racism and discrimination, and where intercultural relationships enrich all involved. This, of course, implies offering high quality and culturally and linguistically relevant education to indigenous people, as well as an intercultural education. So thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you very much, Silvia. And it is very interesting, this thing about epistemic justice. We will discuss it later if you may. Now we welcome to the Dina Buchbinder, who is here. Dina, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. And what a joy to listen to Silvia, as always, full of wisdom, always. Can you see my screen? Thank you so much for this invitation. I am thrilled to be here with all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And before we begin, my apologies, my presentation is in Spanish, but I will be speaking all along in English. And I'd like to invite you, before we jump into a small moment of reflection. I want you to think for a few seconds about a learning experience that made you feel truly alive. When was the last time an educational experience made you feel truly alive? Maybe it happened in childhood, maybe in nature, perhaps with a teacher, maybe through play. What do you think made that moment unforgettable? Now, notice that I did not ask you about information that you memorized. I asked what made you feel because deep learning is rarely disconnected from emotion, curiosity, connection, wonder, joy, or meaning. My name is Dina Buchbinder. I'm a social entrepreneur from Mexico, and I founded Education for Sharing, which I will share more about in a moment. I am a mother of 2 children and someone who loves nature, outdoor sports like surfing. I love to play hide and seek with my kids. And I love building educational experiences that help people reconnect with one another and with the world around them. And today, more than ever, I believe this matters. When I think about the future of education, I think about humanity. We are living through a moment of profound transformation, shaped by, you name it, artificial intelligence, climate uncertainty, growing social polarization. Information has never been more accessible. And yet, something else is becoming increasingly scarce: the capacity to listen deeply, to cooperate across differences, and to act responsibly towards one another. And last but not least, to remain connected to our shared humanity. So, about Education for Sharing, this is an organization that I founded nearly 2 decades ago. We work to help form a better global citizenship from childhood, like starting in childhood, but for all ages, through educational innovation grounded in the power of play. Today, this work has reached over 2 million learners across 13 countries. But what matters most to us is not scale. It's really helping children experience themselves as active participants in the world around them, capable of collaborating, caring, imagining, and taking action together. We do not see play as the opposite of rigor. We see play as a natural pathway that allows us to engage deeper, to have deeper reflections, and deeper human development. So our vision is that education moves beyond preparing children only for the labor market, and instead, it becomes a space where young people can participate and practice citizenship every single day. A space where they learn not only to understand the world, yes, and to care for it, to understand why do they care about it, how can they participate in it, and how can they improve it together. So yes, today we're facing all kinds of educational challenges that go far beyond academics. Across countries and cultures, like Silvia said, we are experiencing a growing crisis of disconnection from ourselves, to begin with, from one another, from nature, and from our collective capacity to imagine different futures, because we will need them. At Education for Sharing, we have seen how many children and young people grow up in environments marked by loneliness, polarization, anxiety, competition, fear of mistakes, and loss of belonging. And often, unintentionally, educational systems reproduce exactly those same conditions. Systems that prioritize standardization over creativity, performance over meaning, individual achievement over collective well-being, and compliance over curiosity. So this question, really, the question that becomes important, one of them is, how can we ensure that education does not lose its humanity, especially at a moment when technology is evolving faster and faster than our ethical, emotional, and civic capacities? I often say that one of the greatest challenges of our time is learning how to hardwire humanity into technology, instead of allowing technology to slowly dehumanize the way that we learn, that we relate, and live together. So for me, one of the answers is play. but not play as a distraction. Play not necessarily as a reward. You can play after you do your homework. No, play shouldn't be something extra. Play as one of the most profoundly human ways that we can learn, connect, and create meaning and build culture together. I love a researcher, his name is Michael Tomasello, and he explains that human beings develop culture through collaboration, shared imagination, and collective meaning making. And that's exactly what happens when children play. And frankly, when we all play. Actually, let's do a tiny experiment together. Are you ready? Okay. Imagine 3 children deciding what to play. One says, let's play hospital. Another one says, no, let's play astronauts. And another one says, I want to be the doctor. What happens next? All of what we're seeing in the screen: negotiation, perspective taking, conflict resolution, creation of rules, shared imagination, and something very important, being present, which is scarce more and more. So in other words, we could say democracy happens. When children play, they negotiate, they imagine, they create worlds together, they solve conflicts, they test, iterate possibilities, and they learn how to coexist. So these are not small interactions. This is the foundation of democratic life. This is citizenship being practiced. Because citizenship is not something children suddenly begin practicing when they become 18 years old or whichever age. Citizenship is rehearsed every single day through participation, cooperation, conflict resolution, empathy, and shared responsibility. And play creates one of the earliest and most natural spaces for that practice to happen. Perhaps this is why play is so transformative, because play remains one of the few spaces where human beings can still experience freedom, safe freedom, curiosity, connection, creativity, joy, and belonging. Play reminds us what it means to be human. So what is science showing us? For many years, we have separated play from learning. We assumed first comes learning, and then comes play. Like you do your play after homework, after you finish your homework. But today, neuroscience and learning science tell us something very different. Play is not a distraction from learning. In fact, play is one of the most powerful vehicles for learning. Research on playful learning shows that deeper learning experiences are often, and here are the 5 characteristics of learning through play: joyful, meaningful, actively engaging, iterative, and social interactive. When learning includes curiosity, surprise, emotional connection, movement, because it's very important to move, and social interaction, it becomes deeper, more memorable, and more human. So play strengthens all these skills that surround the bigger circle: the cognitive skills, physical skills, emotional regulation, creativity, collaboration, resilience, and problem solving. Positive emotions are not distractions from learning. They're conditions for deeper learning. And neuroscience also shows us how we learn better when we feel emotionally safe, connected, seen, and engaged, which means relationships are definitely a part of learning. Yet, many education systems still prioritize memorization over participation, and they prepare young people to retain information, but not necessarily to learn how to collaborate, how to reflect and adapt, how to care for others, or navigate complexity together. And in a world that is increasingly shaped by all these challenges, and can also be opportunities like AI, these deeply human capacities may become more important than ever. So can I have a quick show of hands? How many of you believe that AI will profoundly transform education in the next decade? Can anyone raise their hand or give me a thumbs up? Okay, thank you. So one more question. How many believe our education systems are investing equally in empathy, cooperation, ethical reflection, and human connection? Raise your hands, please. Oh. All of you think that our education systems are investing equally in empathy, cooperation, ethical reflection, and human connection? Not really, right? So the gap concerns me deeply. And this brings us to social justice. Too often play is treated as a luxury, something reserved for privileged children, for when children have time, when children living in vulnerable contexts, like the ones that Silvia was referring to, are offered more rigidity, more control, more pressure, and fewer opportunities for creativity, voice, agency, and reconnection to their own cultures. But the evidence suggests the opposite. Children facing adversity may actually need playful, relational, emotionally safe learning environments even more than anyone. Longitudinal studies in Jamaica, led by Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckman. Have you heard of this one? It's fascinating. James Heckman demonstrated that early playful and relational stimulation transformed life outcomes decades later. Children who participated in this study experienced higher educational attainment, better income, improved mental health, fewer risk behaviors, and greater social and emotional well-being. So this changes the conversation dramatically, because play is no longer a pedagogical preference. Play becomes a strategy for human development, dignity, and equity. Also, something that Silvia mentioned. And perhaps one of the most powerful things about play is that in play, children and frankly human beings experience agency. They experience voice, participation, belonging, and these are deeply political and deeply human experiences. So in Education for Sharing, we understand that play is not, it is the natural language of childhood, but it is also a way of building humanity. We often say, we play to coexist. We play to care. We play to transform. Because, and let me share a little bit about our methodology. It is grounded in 3 interconnected moments. We play, reflect, and act. So children first experience concepts, complex concepts, like the Sustainable Development Goals or social emotional skills and civic values in practice. First, through playful interaction. And then we reflect together about emotions, about relationships, about systems, about justice, sustainability, and community challenges that they are aware of or they become aware of. And finally, we take action in the real world, because we believe education should not end with awareness. It's not enough only to be aware. It should cultivate agency. Sorry, my video it stops. I have not such a good connection, but let me continue.
But we are hearing you, don't worry.
Thank you. It's just distracting the image, but let's continue to play. So really, what I wanted to share is that we don't stop with the reflection. We bring it to the next stage, which is what do we do once we understand what we care about? We bring it into action, to the real world. So we cultivate the agency in children, and sometimes this means that children are creating local environmental campaigns or facilitating intercultural exchanges between communities across countries, or using play to help children in their neighborhood explore empathy, inclusion, conflict resolution, and/or sustainability. So in every case, the goal is the same: to help young people understand, to help young people understand that they're not only powerless observers of the future, but they are actually active co-creators of the future. Through play, we seek to help children and young people to develop empathy, their agency, learn to collaborate, and recognize themselves as part of this shared humanity, and collectively imagine other possible futures. Because rehumanizing education means bringing back the conditions that allow human beings to collaborate and learn together: trust, care, participation, and belonging. We don't want students who only memorize answers. We want human beings that are capable to think critically, to care for others, to collaborate, to create, and to transform the world that they are worried about, that they care about, and that they can do something about, the world that we inhabit. So play is, I think it is preparation for life, but it's not only preparation for life. It's one of the deepest ways that we can live, learn, connect, and become. Before we close, I'd like to invite everyone into one final reflection. Somewhere in the world, every child is asking, do I matter? Do I belong? Can I shape the future? And education answers those questions every single day, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Because the future of education must be deeply human, ethically grounded, and systemically embedded. My hope is that together, all of us, we can help ensure this future is not only imagined, but implemented. Perhaps the problem is not that children play too little. Could it be that adults have forgotten how to play? And when society stops playing, they slowly stop imagining, listening, and building together. So rehumanizing education means daring to create schools and education systems where learning feels meaningful, where mistakes are part of the process, where collaboration matters more than competition, and where every person, every child feels seen, valued, and capable of contributing, of finding and exercising their agency. So perhaps the real question is not whether children are ready for the future. Maybe it's whether our educational systems are still creating the conditions for children to remain fully human. To rehumanize education is not simply to add more play. No, that's also not what I'm saying. It is to create spaces where people feel safe to imagine, connect, care, collaborate, and become spaces where every person, every child can say, I matter, I belong, and I can help shape the world. Thank you very, very much. And I will leave my contact details. Please write to me with your ideas, suggestions, questions. And I apologize, I have to leave soon. I am in the middle of a board meeting, but thank you so much, Hilda. Thank you so much for everyone to create these very meaningful spaces. And I hope to play with you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dina. It has been wonderful. We are running on time, so Rosa, we welcome you, and then we have this time to comment and dialogue with you. I'm sorry you have to leave, really, really, but we will write you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. So, Rosa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. And thank you for being here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what has been the discussion in UNESCO lately regarding the right to education, what it means, and how it's been reshaping. Yes? Is oh, I heard something. Okay. So I'm going to go back a little bit because since the year 2000, some education and world goals, the Millennium Goals, were established, trying to reach 2015 with some accomplishments from the world. The United Nations has been trying to steer, bring together the countries and agree on some goals and agree on some issues that are preventing every person from really exercising their basic human rights. So there has been tremendous progress, of course, since the year 2000, but we are not where we expected to be, not even in 2015, despite all the efforts by governments and civil society in the international community. The world did not achieve the education for all goals established in the year 2000. So in 2015, there were still 58 million children out of school globally and 100 million children who did not complete their primary education. The global monitoring report issued by UNESCO in that year had three objectives in the year 2015, I'm saying, trying to see what had happened since 2000 to 2015. It aimed to take stock of whether the world had achieved these goals, upheld their commitments as countries had adhered to these goals and had committed to achieving them, and it also intended to explain the possible determinants of the pace of progress, what if there could be a direct link between the strategies, the implementation, and the achievement and the goals, or the lack of them, of achieving them. And finally, it made a real deep reflection of identifying key messages to shaping a new agenda for after 2015. And all this reflection and the reality of where the goals were at that time, at 2015, regarding out of school children, completion of primary and secondary education, adult literacy, gender parity and equality, and the quality of education, of course. And that's how in 2015, in the meeting in Incheon and the Incheon Declaration for Education of 2030, this new agenda developed. This agenda was based on the values of the planet, prosperity, and the people, trying to have this huge conversation between all the member states regarding the role that education was playing in transforming society and moving toward an environmental sustainability regarding the planet. Also, of course, regarding prosperity, exploring the roles of education in fostering environmentally sustainable, economically inclusive development, and of course, the people. Trying to discuss inclusive social development as an aspiration to ensure that every child, every woman, every man, and every boy could lead a healthy, dignified, and empowered life. This agenda is comprised in the framework of SDG 4, of the Sustainable Development Goal 4. It tried to enhance the success and the achievements and the progress made until after the Millennium Development Goals, and education for all priorities. And so that's why we have this wonderful goal that seeks to ensure inclusive, equitable, and quality education and promote lifelong learning for all. And we are still working on this. It's important to say that even in 2023, the GEM report, the Global Education Monitoring Report, issued by UNESCO every 1 or 2 years, showed that the targets of SDG 4 didn't stand a chance of being reached. In part, we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic had a play on this, impacted all education systems, impacted learning, impacted access, impacted completion of the education levels. But also, there's a lot of other things happening in the world right now that contribute to us not being able to reach this goal as was intended back in 2015. So right now, the discussions in UNESCO are, we have like a countdown until 2030 to see what will happen, what kind of agenda is the world going to issue, and the member states are going to agree on for after 2030. We are trying to focus on, we can see some things that are worrying for the advancements of education. For example, there's a stagnation of out-of-school children. It has been like that since 2015, so it's not only related to the pandemic, it came before. There's also a percentage of students who do not reach the minimum proficiency in reading and writing, and this is also a global issue. And even some students are showing declining in achievement of basic skills in some middle income and high income countries. This is not only a problem for poor countries. And so the world is trying to focus on these issues and see what we can do moving forward to creating a new agenda between all the countries. So this has also resulted in UNESCO trying to think about what is happening to the right to education and what other things are impacting the realization of this right for everyone. There is a lot of progress. The progress is real. And for example, we know that there are 327 million more students enrolled in school, and more than in the year 2000. There are 45% more students in preschool and 161 more students in colleges and universities. So the progress for these past 25 years is very real. There are more children in school today than at any point in human history, but the expansion and equity are not the same thing. The systems can grow dramatically, but still leave behind the poorest, the rural, the marginalized children who are systematically left behind and who would need some of the things that Silvia was telling us earlier today. So we don't want to assume that the global agenda has failed. We want to recognize all the achievements, all the progress, but we also want to reflect on things that need to be taken in consideration for developing a new agenda for the future. The way we define progress needs to be improved because having another agenda where we will not be able to reach the goals, I think it's, well, I think it puts us in a mood where why do we put ourselves in these very high goals and we want to achieve it, but we already know that we're not going to achieve it. So I think it's important to reflect and maybe UNESCO has been talking about how goals should be national instead of global because not everybody is in the same page. Some countries need to make an effort to put themselves goals that are achievable, but they're also, in the route to providing or making sure that every person in their country has fulfilled the right to education. So what are these new contextual, they're not new, but these contextual drivers that are shaping the evolution of the right to education right now? Demographic shifts. Education systems are facing new challenges regarding some countries are experiencing a decline in their birth rates. So they have less young children and more adult population. Of course, it's important to remind that UNESCO has this lifelong learning perspective, which also reaches adults. And it's not only about having adults catch up on basic skills, but increasingly recognized as a set of rights where they can learn new things, be better prepared for all these changes that we are seeing in the world, no? And so these demographic shifts have an impact in how we steer our education systems. If we move on from a younger population to an older population, it's important to know that, for example, as most of the countries are decreasing their child population, by the year 2050, by the mid 2050s, more than a third of the world's children will live in only 4 countries: China, India, Nigeria, and Pakistan. And only 10 countries will be home to half of the world's children. So this is important things to take in consideration when we try to imagine or draft a new agenda based on education. Also, there's a disruption of the world of work. The workforce is undergoing profound transformations. Technological, of course, technology has a big say in this, of course. The world is also facing new, more complex crises in terms of climate change, displacement, human mobility, and those are also affecting some, countries are maybe getting migration and their population is increasing, not because of childbirth, but because of migration. And they also have to adjust their education systems to try to accommodate their new citizens, no? Of course, there's also that top and also displacement, human displacement because of climate change crisis within countries. It's happening in our country, in Mexico, it happens all the time. And so it means a need for a new education facilities or modalities in places where population is moving around and there are no schools to be able to fulfill this right, no? Digitalization and artificial intelligence. I don't want to get too much into this, but of course it's important, very important to discuss this. And I don't want to get too much into this because this would require us for another entire forum dedicated to this discussion. The digital divide. Education inequalities are increasingly amplified, but by this digital divide. The digital divide has multiple facets: access, infrastructure, affordability, and of course, the lack of digital skills. So the challenges of digitalization and artificial intelligence in education, like I said, this would require a new and another forum dedicated just to this topic. But just to say that access to information and knowledge is essential for developing critical thinking, making informed decisions, participating fully and actively in society. Increased use of digital platforms has also raised concern over learners' physical and mental health. Prolonged screen time is linked to eye strain, headaches, and other issues in health issues. So those things need to be assessed also, no? Even beyond just talking about the impact of IA in education in terms of using IA for education and teachers, having teachers being trained for this, no? Also, UNESCO has recently raised the issue of a shortage of teachers. So in order to reach these goals, there need to be more than 40 million teachers, new teachers entering the workforce in this is a global figure, of course, but this is an important issue to also take into consideration when we want to think about the right to education for everyone. All the conditions need to be there, and for that, many steps are still not fulfilled. So we need to really take everything into account when we want to talk about this. So how do we reimagine or imagine the right to education for a changing world? I think UNESCO has been giving this a lot of thought. Even Silvia Schmelkes has participated in some of these world discussions by UNESCO. And of course, we come back to the same persistent barriers that she mentioned even earlier: discrimination, exclusion, and emerging inequalities. Traditionally excluded groups remain excluded, inequalities gaps widen, socioeconomic disadvantages, gender disparities, indigenous peoples, minorities, learners with disability are traditionally the same groups of population that continue to be left behind. And so with this, I would like to just finally say that the aims of education are clearly articulated in international normative frameworks. Education is directed to the full development of the human personality. It promotes the respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms. It promotes understanding, tolerance, friendship, and respect for the natural environment. And also, of course, education is a right that enables us to fulfill other basic human rights. So while these aims remain unchanged, the global context has evolved. Well, I already talked about these drivers that have been impacting education right now. So I think that in order to have a clearer view of what we can do moving forward in terms of building a new international agenda agreed by all member states of UNESCO. And it's important to take all these things in consideration. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Rosa, for giving us the point of view of UNESCO and the need of a new agenda, really. So finally, we welcome Anne Kierkegaard, who is with us from Norway, to hear about her point of view. Thank you, Rosa.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very honored to be among such a distinguished group of colleagues. I cannot match you at all. I've been 30 years at university as a teacher, and the focus that have been very much in the last 20 years of those 30 plus years has been educating people to be prepared to go out and work in what we call the third sector, so civil society. So mainly the focus has been to educate professions or professionals to go out and be part of civil society and work in civil society. The point of departure, now I'm Norwegian, so I've been teaching in Scandinavia, so mainly in Sweden, actually. My main theoretical basis, and this has always been like this for me. I started out as a peace activist when I was in my early teens, and I continued doing that. So I have that side. I've been part of that kind of work for peace. And leaning very much on Scandinavian peace researchers. So I would like to take the chance today to talk about peace research and peace theory. as extremely relevant to educators, generally speaking. So for all of us who are educating educators, I think it's very important to realize that there is a body of research that is very much focused on different in a different way on peace than what is generally taught. Over the last 10, 15 years, the change has been very marked, at least in the European and American context, where so the global north has been very focused on a very negative form of peace, which is very violent, and that completely contradicts the peace research that is defined by peace researchers. And you represent, those that I've heard today, you represent the classical approach to peace education. And this is basically where peace as a notion and a value in and of itself has remained a core. And it's very nice to hear you speak about this, because I recognize everything that you've been speaking about from my own background. So just to sort of, because I think that a lot of the stuff that I have been teaching my students over the years have been very focused on, not on education as such, but it's been focused on politics and how politics is being made, and where can we get in and work for peace as educators in higher education, for instance. So what is really, really central in peace research and peace studies, as compared to the IR, International Relations version, which is the one that is being taught mainly at universities today, there's a strong focus on decolonization. There's a very strong focus on anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, and a very strong tradition of critically looking at epistemic violence and integrating that in how we understand the violence that is that determines the way that politics is being made. So listening, for instance, to Sylvia was extremely interesting, because you picked up exactly on those things that is so central when I teach peace studies. The way that we formulate peace in ways that are contradictory to respect, to dignity, and to justice, in the way that politics is being made today. So what we do as peace researchers, and that I think that we can bring into the educational sphere, because that's where peace education, perhaps I see the link very strongly, is the way that we talk about and discuss and reflect on violence. So there's a need, I think, in many places to start to discuss violence as such, and how violence is tied in with the way that we make the decisions that we make. So being able, for instance, as Rosa says, the difficulty in getting serious about the goals, the next set of goals, because we always end up every 15th year, we end up saying, oh, we didn't reach these goals. And if we want to refocus to be able to reach those goals, I think there is a need in the community of people working in with peace as a goal in itself and a value in itself, to reflect on the ways that violence impedes the possibilities that we have to actually reach even the simplest of those goals, and how epistemic justice becomes really central in that, and how the ways that we stop kids from attaining an education that reflects their needs and their possibilities in the future, tying in very much also with oh, I forgot her name now, Dina. She disappeared, right? She had to leave. But I mean, all the things that you've been talking about ties so perfectly into the ways that I think around peace education for adults, peace education as higher academic subject in itself. So what I've started doing, I left university because it became more and more impossible to work with peace studies, and more the focus was turned towards conflict, and to the kind of conflict resolution that doesn't really resolve the conflict, but that resolves the symptoms of conflict. So you will not go in and talk about epistemic issues, for instance. You will, and I think we all can recognize this, there's a sort of a tendency to universalizing an idea, I think, these days. So this has always been an issue, but I think with social media and with the tendency of education becoming, I think, more and more difficult to access mentally for a lot of young people, we end up in situations where it's difficult to convey the multiplicity of experiences that we actually need to have an openness for, and a preparedness to include, not necessarily in terms of everything. I should be everything. I should be able to do everything, experience everything, but in a way of saying that this is what I am. So the identity of yourself, but also then that matching with the identity of others, and being able to share that across divides that might be in a society. So the education for solving problems, educating people through solving conflicts with non-violent means, which necessitates the education of young people and children in being able to accept, not only accept, but to embrace the differences that we have between us and see those as riches. To understand that peace is dependent completely on justice, and it's dependent on dignity. And non-universals. If you want to if you think of peace as something that you can enforce on someone, then you have already lost the whole idea of what we have to try and build. So it has to be inclusive. It has to be through respect and dignity. And this is more and more difficult to teach at university. I think many would think that was a bit strange, but at university it's really difficult these times to do this. And so I've chosen to move out of university to be able to do this, because also in the times that we live in right now, they are relatively precarious. So we have environmental problems, we have educational problems, we have problems with poverty in ways that are exclusionary, and those are not just problems that we have in so-called poor countries. We have them among ourselves in the West. So when I say we, I'm speaking of my own group of people. And we need ways of working with our students, whether they are children or adults, in making them safe, in trusting their own ability to communicate, and also to seek out situations where they are content and feel safe and feel secure, leaning in themselves, being with themselves and in with themselves in that situation. So this is what I want to focus on going forward. So I'm pretty new in being independent, but that is sort of what I think is really, really central today, to be able to reach not just students who are choosing to study a very odd subject at university, and bringing that out, sort of out of the ivory tower and into the hands of everyone, basically. And at the heart of all of this is to learn to listen, really. So the central aspect here is to be able to learn people, to teach people to listen, and learning the listening art, really. Because if you're not prepared to also question your own taken for granted approaches and thinking of them as natural, instead of cultural and provincial, but you think of them as universals, you will not be able to hear what other people say. And without that, we cannot hope for anything of what we have been talking about today. So this is the vision I have, that to be able to contribute to providing a space where I can participate in educating educators, basically, for going out and being in society with an understanding that peace is dependent on the decolonization of minds, and particularly the decolonization of the old imperial states. So Europeans and North Americans, there's really a huge need to decolonize our own minds, and to work legally, politically, educationally, from an inclusive perspective and a perspective of dignity. So I think that just to because I'm coming from a completely different background than I think many does in peace education. Many professors in university who teach peace don't think of themselves as peace educators. And for me, that is a bit odd. It's a bit strange, because that's what we do at university. We educate people for peace when you do a peace studies program. So it was just a matter of presenting that. And I think, to me, so reflecting on the rehumanization, that is the theme, as I have understood it, for next year's big conference. I think for me, that means to give access to a different way of thinking around peace than the way that we are most often taught today, to think about peace as a very limited liberal peace perspective derived and a bit misread from Immanuel Kant, that peace is so much more than that, and that we have traditions from across the globe that are so much more interesting to lift up and to study and to make live. in our relations with each other, because there's so much that we share when we look at it cross-culturally, actually. So my contribution, and I hope that you can use it for something.
Thank you so much, Anne. You have been very inspiring too. And you all have adjusted to the time, so I don't have to be have to make a tracking timer. Well, so we are now in the time for questions from the public, the reactions and dialogue. So feel free to ask our panelists. If you may, you can just raise your hand and we will hear you. If you want to write a question also, there is the chat. So feel free to talk with our panelists. Well, I have some questions, if I may. Sylvia, you talk about epistemic justice. What would be necessary to achieve epistemic justice? What do we have to do as educators to achieve epistemic justice in our classroom or in our? I'm talking like as a teacher.
Well, it all depends on what your group is like, no? Because if your group is multicultural, it is very easy to do epistemic justice in the classroom because the protagonists are there. The people that have the different knowledges and the scenario for dialogue is there. The problem is when you have a culturally homogeneous group, and you want to do epistemic justice, no, and you want to deal with something that goes against racism and prejudice, because then you have to import. No, you're not going to find it there in the classroom. You're going to have to import systematized knowledge from other sources and different ways of knowing. And there is a problem there because much of the knowledge of indigenous peoples, for example, and of other the Oriental culture, etc., are not entirely systematized. They are not documented. So it is very difficult sometimes to get access to other ways of knowing and other knowledges that you can enter in dialogue with. No, so I think this is one of the there are a lot of studies. No, and first of all we have to look for them because they're not easily available. So you have to go and look for them. But then we also have to promote the systematization of indigenous knowledge so that actually dialogue can occur. No, and that is something that the indigenous peoples have to do themselves. We can't do it for them, or we can do it with them, but not for them. No, and they have to participate. They have to be protagonists. So this is like a process, no, in which little by little this knowledge comes into all of our different classrooms and also permeates the curriculum, the national curriculum even, no? So that epistemic justice can be gradually introduced into our classrooms and into racist education can occur. So that I'm speaking of groups in which we are teachers. If you are working with indigenous population, then epistemic justice is something entirely different because there what you want to do is to bring in the indigenous knowledge that is already there, it's in the classroom and it's in the community. You want to bring it on equal footing with curriculum content. So if you're dealing with indigenous population, what you have to do is to foster the expression of their own culture. So in order to bring it into dialogue with them. So it all depends on the group.
We have another question? Because this takes me to the epistemic violence that I talk about. Could you explain a little bit more about epistemic violence, Anne? and how is it related to the epistemic justice?
Epistemic violence is when you either erase or disregard knowledge coming from the wrong places. So knowledge that comes from traditions that you have defined as lesser than your own, or lesser than the kind of knowledge that is generally accepted in your sphere of, so I mean, Western education will accept Western science as the knowledge base that is the correct one, and everything then is subordinated under that to the extent that they are even accepted. So and you erase traditions from outside of that context that you want to appropriate. So you appropriate knowledge from other places and you erase the origins of it. You don't tell that story at all. So this is part of epistemic violence. Also, as a knower, that you disregard your own double or triple knowledge traditions, that you prioritize one over all the others. And this is a discussion that we have had for some time in Scandinavia, for instance, among researchers and among university teachers, but we never sort of apply it to concretely to, for instance, peace studies. So in peace studies, you will have one kind of knowledge which is prioritized over all other kinds of knowledges or all other kinds of definitions. So it's both the kind of violence that you put on yourself, that you do to yourself to keep the knowledge away that is not the correct one, but it's also that you actually might not know the true origins of something that you're teaching. So that is how it's used in my field of work. But I had a comment also to add to your question to Sylvia, because I have worked in multicultural, so in international. So I've worked with international classes for many years, and a lot of our students have been from migrant communities close to the universities, so in the local communities here. But also people coming from outside, so coming from other countries in the global south to our classrooms. And to work with, and I agree with everything Sylvia said, it's much easier when you have a mixed group. It's really difficult. It's not difficult to teach it, but it's difficult to learn it if you don't have a mixed group. Because everyone that comes into my classroom, for instance, it would be very awful of them not to be accepting of, this is a problem with race, for instance, and race ideologies, or a racialized racist culture. You can explain that, but if you don't have a mixed group of students, they will all say, yes, that's really awful. And then they will go out and will still practice racism. The problem that you have in a mixed classroom, and I'm talking now about adults, so they're already formed, basically, is that they will be able to tackle the intellectual aspects of it, but when someone among themselves points out that that was racist of you towards me, then it becomes personal and they have huge problems in dealing with it. And I've been involved in so many such situations, trying to explain to students that, yes, you were actually racist, even though you don't understand in what sense you were and you didn't get an explanation. So let me try and, break it down. And that is often quite shocking to people who think of themselves as very open to discover that they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to invite Jessica Badillo to share her thought about intercultural education that she wrote in the comments. Please, Jessica, feel free to comment.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jessica Badillo from Universidad Veracruzana, Mexico, and I wrote something about the importance of intercultural education. Here in Mexico, Dr. Silvia Schmelkes and other important authors have been doing a very important effort for this intercultural education, for the education of indigenous people, about the intercultural curriculum that we have adopted, about it in the educational system. And we need to improve the strategies we have today with the Nueva Escuela Mexicana is the educational model we have right now. We have an opportunity, but we need to improve the professors' formation about this, because we have a program, but the professors don't know exactly how to take the intercultural education in the classrooms. Then we have to work about it and recognize the important work about it of Dr. Silvia Schmelkes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Please, Elisa.
Jessica.
Thank you. Just very briefly, thank you for a fantastic seminar. This question is for Rosa about the 40 million teachers that the world needs. Can you tell us a bit more about it? I mean, if there's an inequality and injustice, it's the lack of teachers. We cannot think of having a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa, for your question. This is the distribution, the global distribution, no? So countries that have accelerated more in access, of course, have been trying to very quickly incorporate teachers to the workforce. But the teaching profession has been less popular between the young peoples, so we have less young people wanting to become teachers. Teachers have, globally, still seeking for better conditions in their pay, training, and professional development around the world. So it's kind of a little bit is about distribution in some countries where more teachers are needed. In other countries, teachers are also, growing and getting old and exiting the workforce, and not enough new teachers are coming in. So it has to be with that, and also with, like I said, with young people not being motivated by becoming teachers. And of course, I also always like to say that, for example, here in Mexico, we have over 2 million teachers, and we never think that we have a shortage of teachers, but we do. Sorry, because we have 40% of our schools are not complete schools. They have less groups, less teachers. Sometimes the teacher is also the principal and administrator. We don't have enough physical education teachers or art teachers for all the schools. So when we talk about wanting to have universal access, we need to have sufficient amount of teachers, no? And then the report on teachers also talks about professional development, training, in work training after they graduate from their the university, and teachers are finding it hard to stay in the teaching profession. So that's what there's a report on teachers. This is the first one that UNESCO made 2 years ago. They also had the first global conference on teachers in Chile with a declaration talking about these challenges on the teaching force, that we need to continue even talking about universal access and universal completion of education.
Thank you. It's a huge problem.
Yes. Please, Regina, feel free to comment what you have wrote in the comments, because I think it's very, very interesting what you're saying there.
Well, in my experience, I am a peace educator in Brazil. I haven't had any incentive, let's say, to train teachers or to motivate people to learn about peace education in formal institutions, either schools or public schools or private schools or university. Actually, every time I try to make a sort of introduction to peace education in the university, or, I mean, different educational environments, people rarely understand the importance of it. You know, the schools and university, they seem to be worried only about marketing, what people are going to do in their jobs, or how are they going to have social status. Actually, sometimes they look for the universities that they are more that promote sort of social status, regardlessly if they have the vocation or the talent or the will of working in the field. So it's all very much commerce oriented. So I work as an independent teacher. I have a collective in my town, and we work with another institution, which is also ONG, because we don't have this kind of people who are helping us financially, or even introducing, more opportunities for us to spread this kind of methodology. But I think it all makes sense. Of course, I've been listening to all these wonderful researchers, educators, and we are very privileged here in this group, because we don't have to convince each other that, changing and humanizing education is fundamental, for our survivance in the planet, actually, because we are being ruled by people who are very violent and more kind of it contaminates, even the countries that are not involved directly in the conflict. So this is the kind of model we have, you know, outside of this group, let's say, but the market and the schools and the university, they work with the same logic. you know they don't consider this to be really precious. So my question is, and also it's a challenge for me and I think for all of us, is how can we influence the people who are in power now, and not only politically but inside the educational systems, you know because this is what sometimes it bothers me, because I mean we are preaching for people who are already converted here, and sometimes we cannot get out of this circle which is very comfortable and wonderful. I feel so happy to see that so many people here are working and dedicating their lives to, promote human values, education, inclusion, everything. It's a hard task, and usually it's not financially possible, especially if you are outside of the system, you know. And inside the system, we have also different issues, as Anne mentioned. I cannot adapt to university environment, probably because of the same reasons. That's why I had to make a choice to work with freedom and freedom of thinking and teaching. And for this, I cannot be in the regular system. Unfortunately, it's not because I don't want to. I would love to, because I think those people are the ones who need more. Because the community I work are children from public schools. So they have their own challenges already, you know. So we help them to be prepared to get scholarships in private schools. So at least they can have the same opportunity of learning when they want to join a university or a job later in life. Because I work with teenagers, mostly from 10 to 17. But it's really not mentioned or introduced or valued in different education systems, in the formal, not even university or schools, at least here in Brazil. There are very few initiatives on this um, direction, let's say, and people are not prepared enough. They don't have the knowledge, because it's not just be nice and good and then you're peaceful. There's the whole philosophy and sociology and political and spiritual, and all the dimensions are included, and the way that we prepare teachers today, unfortunately, it's very shallow. You know, we are unable to inspire them at least to learn about it, you know, let alone put it in practice, you know. So I think, in my opinion, this is one of the biggest challenge we have. How can we break this wall? How can we find a gap where people can really get interested about, be curious about, because we can start with curiosity. It doesn't need to be something highly intellectual, or you know we are going to change the world, like it's too big. If we are not able to do the small things, in our community, in our neighborhood, we are not going to achieve very much, outside of it. you know so I think it's more, I'm sharing here more my frustration about the education right now. I don't have the solution. I am trying to do my part, but I know it's limited. But that's what I can do now. But I feel very hopeful and very happy to meet this group, with such brilliant people who are also looking at the same goals, at least, that we need to really pursue, to make our lives meaningful. So I'm very, very grateful, and happy to get to know all of you, because, together we can really change the world. This is, it sounds a little bit naive, but I prefer to be an optimistic than to be a pessimistic. We have changed the world many times, so we just need to get together and understand the power that we have in our hands, and start doing it. Just small actions, add up to big actions. That's the way I see it. So I'm very happy. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you,
And
Regina. Anne, do you want to speak something? Oh, excuse me. Somebody? Anne, please.
Yes. No, I actually had a question for Rosa as well, because we're very fortunate to have someone who actually knows UNESCO from the inside. That's very nice. It's very, very good. So kind of because I was thinking about this, and then Regina mentioned this as well, the importance, because I was thinking about the way of how do you make this real? How do you make the goals attainable? And I know people have been involved in the SDGs and the Millennium Goals, and it's all professors and people from my old department. So one question I have as an educator is then how, because it's a very long time since I read through all the goals and all the ways of measuring and whatever. That's a very long time since I did that. But in what way does UNESCO help peace educators? So that because the 40 million that you said 40 million that we're missing, right? It's an enormous number of teachers that we're missing, and I mean we're already missing people in the system, very obviously. So, in what way can and do UNESCO help peace educators? So I'm just curious, because this is something that we could actually work on. I mean, we could as a community, peace as a peace educator community, we can actually perhaps help UNESCO think around that.
Thank you very much for your question. And I identified a lot also with Regina, what Regina was saying to us. It's of course, it's a very important question and not an easy one to answer, of course. But for example, one of the reflections that we're making is that we are a more educated society, and people in power are more educated, and then they are making these decisions that are, of course, anti-peaceful at all. And so we are kind of reflecting on this. I don't think we have a proper answer right now for that. But one of the things that UNESCO is thinking about, and also was commented earlier today by Dina, is the thing about trust, educating for trust and really trusting us instead of educating for fear. And I think that is one of the things that we would have to work with very hard on teacher training. I don't know. One of the things we try to see, for example, is that in initial teacher education, if we have contents of citizenship education, of course, peace, discrimination, intercultural. So all of these contents should be embedded in initial training, and then of course in training after you are in the profession. No, so some of the things are mentioned in our guidelines, of course, but it is hard. You were talking about conflict and conflict resolution, so that is also, of course, one of the things that we think should be in teacher training, in student curriculum, even in assessment. So it has to be, the entire the entire thread of the peace concept and the peace education throughout the system, throughout the teacher training, and throughout even also in monitoring and assessment. No, I think it's very hard because we have these conflicting topics or curriculums that we think need to be, in our curriculums, science and history and literature. But I think peace education has to be a common transition topic in all curriculum. And another conflict that we are seeing is that science, people are not, who is using science to take decisions, to make decisions, and science is not being used as we would think by the people who are more educated. So I think these challenges require a lot more reflection, analysis. Hopefully, Regina, not by our captive, like you said, the group that's already interested in talking about this, but finding a way to disseminate all these discussions and reflections to other spaces. I think that is very, very important. And I think Sylvia wants to comment also.
Please, Sylvia, feel free.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to add to what Rosa was saying. I agree entirely with what she's saying. But in 2023, the Assembly, the Conference of UNESCO, approved the revision of the 1974 Declaration on Peace education. And I was a member of the group that revised the 1974. It was a recommendation, not a declaration, a recommendation, no, by UNESCO. And because it had, the one in 1974 said nothing about sustainability, nothing about interculturality, nothing about gender and gender equity. And all of these things were introduced to this new version of the peace recommendation, no? And for me, it's very, very strange that it hasn't been disseminated enough. Nobody knows about it. And this was 2 years ago, 3 years ago almost, no? And very few people know about it. And I think it's something that we really have to make known, no? And UNESCO, and this is something that I don't know, maybe Rosa can explain, UNESCO was supposed to work further on materials and webinars and discussions and things like that, and I haven't seen anything of that. No, and I think it's really important because these subject matters. No, I think peace is absolutely central. Interculturality, of course, I think is absolutely central. Sustainability is at the core of our survival, no, as a species. So I think it's something really very, very important. And gender, well, that's something that really cuts across, no, all our lives. So I think that the values education that involves all of these things is one of the most important things that education can do, and perhaps the agenda post 2030 should take that into account. That's what I want.
Thank you, Sylvia. Can I comment real quick? Because yes, you are absolutely right. We had a meeting last year in Santo Domingo for the region, for Central America and Latin America, on the recommendation, on the new revised recommendation. And there have been some publications. I will try to look for them real quick and put them in the chat box in a few minutes. Because they have there's already something for teachers, of course, and something for I think like a roadmap. So I'm going to put them in the chat in a little while. So there have been some publications, but not enough talked about and disseminated. I agree with you that we need to do like more effort in taking this outside of UNESCO, no, and really reaching out. UNESCO for this year is making for member states, they launch a survey on what have they been doing after the revised recommendation. So, but it's of course a voluntary survey, and member states that wish to report on things that they have done. There are some interesting things in some parts of the world of legislation and curriculum and real efforts to include this the recommendation, the new version of this recommendation. So let me try to find a few of the documents and put them here in the chat.
Well, thank you very much to everyone. It has been very wonderful to have you all here. We are really grateful to have these wonderful panelists that have invited us to reflect about how to build a better future in which education could be a real way to rehumanize our world through the development of empathy, collaboration, caring, sense of belongingness, and solidarity. Thank you all for your generosity, and hopefully can see you at the Global Forum in Nairobi in next year. And Jorge, please, could you close this webinar? Is our head of the activities committee of this Global Forum.
Thank you, Hilda. On behalf of the Executive Council of Humanizing Education Movement and the Global Forum 2027, I want to say thank you to each one of our panelists. This panel discussion has been so interesting, and also we have the compromise that this reflection should be transformed in actions in our local context, right? So thank you very much for all your knowledge and wisdom that you have shared in this panel discussion. I just want to invite back again, I have Professor Robert Helfenbein here, that is our secretary. If there is any thing to add before we finish this panel discussion, but to invite for next panel discussions about rehumanizing education topics. So thank you very much for your participation. Professor Robert, if you have any final words too.
Just thank you so much. What a rich and generative conversation that I hope only is just beginning. I think a lot more of this interaction and thinking about how the Global Forum can be a space for continuing this work and thinking about the impact in actual communities and educative spaces is hopefully our shared goal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hilda, and for our panelists and attendees.
Thank
Good
you so
afternoon
much.
and good evening.
Good afternoon, good
See you soon.
evening. See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Bye, Doctora Rosa.
Bye.
Gracias.